There are moments in royal-adjacent history when the contrast is so sharp, so unintentionally amusing, that it practically begs to be documented in long-form commentary. Christmas 2025 delivered exactly such a moment, neatly wrapped and topped with a bow. On one side stood Catherine, the Princess of Wales, seated at a piano with her 10-year-old daughter, Princess Charlotte, performing a gentle duet broadcast to millions during the Together at Christmas carol service. On the other side came a lifestyle brand newsletter from Montecito, complete with dim sum, candles, sidebars, and an impressively determined reliance on run-on sentences. If it feels like these two things don't belong in the same conversation, that's because they don't. Not in terms of status, that debate was settled long ago, but in purpose, execution, and overall tone. One was institutional, restrained, and quietly meaningful. The other felt like something dashed off at 11:58 p.m., written by someone repeatedly refreshing the internet and murmuring, "Post something." Anything. On Christmas Eve, British television broadcast the Princess of Wales's annual Together at Christmas service. It began with a pre-recorded segment filmed at Windsor Castle. Catherine at the piano, Princess Charlotte beside her, hands placed with care, posture steady. Attention unwavering. There was no monologue, no lifestyle promotion, no explanatory narrative, just music. The message was clear without needing explanation. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about continuity. Charlotte was not pushed into the spotlight, oversold, or presented as a prodigy. She was simply there, taking part, learning how public life works through gentle inclusion. The following day came the Sandringham Walk to St. Mary Magdalene Church. Catherine wore soft tartan in rich, muted shades. Fashion observers quickly noted what the Wales family consistently gets right. The adults step back so the children can move forward. Charlotte, in particular, was given room to shine, greeting well-wishers, accepting gifts, and calmly passing bouquets to aides with a courteous please and thank you. No fuss, no awkward moments, no drama. And it's here, ironically, that the contrast starts to bite. According to Hello magazine, Catherine's outfit served a dual purpose, a subtle nod to Scottish heritage, and a conscious decision not to visually overshadow her daughter. In royal language, that's known as reading the room. Charlotte is 10 years old. She's being introduced to public life gradually, deliberately, and with clear boundaries. This is the crucial distinction many commentators overlook. The Wales children are public figures because their roles are public. Their visibility isn't optional, but it is carefully controlled, consistently managed, and guided by long-term stability. Which leads to the unavoidable question. If Charlotte is being brought forward with such restraint, how does someone who stepped away from the system react when relevance is no longer automatic? Enter the newsletter. Within hours of the Wales family's Christmas coverage, subscribers to Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, as ever, received a festive note. Not from a monarch, not from a head of state, not from anyone with a constitutional role. Simply, a letter. It opened with Meghan nibbling the remains of a Christmas Eve dim sum feast, wrapping last-minute presents, and tiptoeing downstairs to check on Santa's cookies and reindeer carrots, all packed into a single paragraph that doubled as both sentence and endurance test. From there, readers were led through pajama-clad board games, flickering candles, snoring dogs, endless grazing, and, intriguingly, sidebars. The letter closed with a broad benediction to readers everywhere, whether cozied up or dressed to the nines, alone or together, delivered as though it were a royal message, minus the small detail of actually being royal. Which leads to the obvious question. Why? The issue isn't that Meghan wrote a Christmas message. It's when she wrote it, and how clearly it seemed to mirror Catherine and Charlotte's moment. This has become a familiar pattern. Praise settles on the Wales family. Coverage gains momentum. And within hours, something appears from Montecito. A podcast clip, a press release, a brand launch, a personal essay, a carefully staged pap walk. This time, the contrast was particularly stark. Where Catherine allowed a 10-year-old to communicate through music, Meghan opted for narration. Where Charlotte showed ease in public interaction, Meghan presented a meticulously curated domestic scene. Hello, I see you everywhere. Where one side spoke through restraint, the other leaned heavily on adjectives, many of them. Much has been said about when and how children appear in public life. The distinction here isn't about love, privacy, or parental intention. It's about purpose. The Wales children will be public figures, regardless of personal choice. Their appearances are therefore deliberate, limited, and carefully structured. When Prince George volunteered at the Passage, a long-established charity supporting the homeless, there was no confusion about the purpose. He showed up, he took part, he learned. By contrast, Meghan and Harry have said their children will feature in future philanthropic initiatives tied to Archewell Philanthropies. That choice isn't inherently problematic, but it does alter the optics. When children are presented as part of a brand's expansion, the public takes notice. That's why back-of-the-head images and carefully obscured volunteering photos don't resonate in the same way. They feel more like placeholders, teasers, rather than genuine participation. And when clarity is missing, speculation quickly fills the space. Consider our big kitchen in Los Angeles, where the Sussexes were photographed volunteering. It's a venue often used for corporate and celebrity PR, polished, camera-ready, and transactional. Now compare that with The Passage, a decades-old organization serving the homeless, deeply embedded in royal patronage and notably unglamorous. One approach is optics-led, the other is service-led. And the public can see the difference. Nothing highlights that contrast more clearly than the now well-known flower handoff moments. At Sandringham, Princess Charlotte calmly handed her bouquets to an aide, following protocol without comment or hesitation. In another clip, she politely asked an assistant to hold her belongings and immediately said, "Thank you." This isn't precociousness, it's training. By contrast, during the September 2022 walkabout after Queen Elizabeth II's death, Meghan appeared hesitant to hand over flowers, reportedly wanting to place them herself before eventually passing them to an aide. Security protocol exists for a reason. Hands fill quickly. Efficiency matters. Charlotte seemed to understand this instinctively. That isn't an insult. It's simply an observation. Meghan has spoken at length about being a hugger and about finding British formality difficult. Like, "I was a hugger. I've always been a hugger. I didn't realize that that is really jarring for a lot of Brits." The irony is that at Sandringham, Charlotte, raised within that same formal culture, warmly embraced a well-wisher, unprompted and completely at ease. The difference wasn't culture. It was context. Hugging strangers isn't charming when it feels forced. It becomes charming when it feels natural. Charlotte didn't explain herself. She didn't narrate the hug. She didn't use it to make a point. She simply did it. Then there's the letter itself. Readers quickly noticed inconsistencies. Previous statements suggested the children knew the truth about Santa, yet the letter focused on keeping the magic alive. Long-established Christmas Eve traditions like gumbo were suddenly replaced with dim sum. A Netflix holiday special on hosting contrasted with the admission that dinner had been ordered in. Taken individually, these details seem minor. Together, they point to a bigger issue, a narrative that shifts depending on audience reaction. Traditions, including credibility, only work when they are consistent. From a purely editorial perspective, the letter struggled. Each paragraph felt like a single, unbroken sentence. Images piled upon images, clauses stacked until the meaning became blurred. It came across less as a heartfelt note and more like a lifestyle brand mood board translated straight into prose, which is unfortunate because simplicity would have been far more effective. Here's the key point. This comparison was never fair. Catherine doesn't compete, she represents. Charlotte doesn't perform, she participates. And the monarchy doesn't need newsletters to prove its authority. That's why a piano duet can communicate more than 1,000 words, and why even a 2,000-word explanation still can't replicate institutional legitimacy.